Welcome to Finnegan's Fireside Tales. Today we will be reading The Monkey's Paw by W. Jacobs. Part 1. Without, the night was cold and wet, but in the small parlour of Laburnum Villa the blinds were drawn and the fire burned brightly. Father and son were at chess, the former, who possessed ideas about the game involving radical changes, putting his king into such sharp and unnecessary perils that it even provoked comment from the white-haired old lady knitting placidly by the fire. "Hark at the wind," said Mr. White, who, having seen a fatal mistake after it was too late, was amiably desirous of preventing his son from seeing it. "I'm listening," said Herbert, "so that I may see my way through the defence." "Mate in two," said Mr. White. "I can't see it," said the son gloomily. "You will see it, you will see it," cried his father with delight. "I discover your pieces are not in their correct places. You have overlooked the Queen's pawn. Ha ha ha." Herbert looked up with a smile. "You have made your first move in a hurry," he said, "and I have time to think out the defence. You have made a blunder." The old lady by the fire made no comment. She was used to her son's brilliant ideas about the game. Moreover, she had long been accustomed to her husband's brilliant ideas about everything. Suddenly there came a loud knocking sound at the door, and a stranger entered the room. He was a wizened little man with a face like a monkey, a broad, flat nose, and small, close-set eyes. "Good evening," said Mr. White. "Come in, sir. Sit down." The visitor took a seat near the fire, drew off his gloves, and laid a small twisted object on the table. It was a monkey's paw, shriveled and dried, and seemed to possess a strange, almost sinister air. "This," said the visitor, "is a very curious thing. I had it from an old fakir, who claimed that it had the power to grant 3 wishes, that is, 3 separate desires, but mark you, the consequences are strange, and often tragic." The family listened with mixed feelings of disbelief and curiosity. "A monkey's paw," said Herbert, laughing. "Do you mean to say that this thing can grant wishes?" "I do," said the visitor solemnly. "I have seen it in action, and the result is never what one expects. 3 separate wishes, 3 separate fates. Take care, or you may be sorry for your desire." Mr. White took the paw in his hand. It was warm and strangely lifelike, yet shriveled. "Well," he said, "I am not superstitious, but it is certainly a curious thing. Perhaps one wish wouldn't hurt. We are all men of science, after all." Herbert laughed and shook his head. "Father, you are never serious about anything." The visitor smiled. Be cautious. The paw's power is not to be trifled with. Its magic is real, but its workings are beyond human understanding. Only those who dare to accept the consequences should attempt to use it." And so the paw lay on the table, silent, ominous, and full of promise, while the family debated its reality, laughing nervously, yet with a tingling sense of anticipation. Part 2. That night the storm beat furiously on the windows, and the wind moaned through the trees. The fire in the parlour flickered, and cast dancing shadows on the walls. Mr. White could not sleep, and he kept thinking of the monkey's paw lying on the table. What harm could one wish do, he thought. It might be fun to try it, just one wish, and we shall see. He rose quietly, and took the paw in his hand. Its shriveled fingers seemed almost alive, curling around his fingers. He recalled the visitor's warning, yet he could not resist. "Well," he said aloud, "suppose I try it. I wish for £200. At first nothing happened. The fire crackled, the wind howled, and the rain beat against the windows, but all seemed normal. Mr. White shrugged, and laid the paw on the table again. The next day Herbert went to work as usual, laughing and joking with his father about the foolishness of the previous night. "I suppose you've given up that silly idea," he said. But later a visitor arrived at Laburnum Villa. He was a solemn man, with a ledger in his hand. "I am from the company where your son works," he said. "I regret to inform you that Herbert has met with a terrible accident at the factory. He was caught in the machinery and was instantly killed." Mr. White staggered back. £200, the exact sum he had wished for, was offered as compensation. He looked at the monkey's paw on the table. The visitor left, leaving the family stunned and grief-stricken. Mrs. White wept bitterly. Mr. White held the paw tightly in his hand, horrified at the realization that the wish had been granted in a way he had never imagined. The room seemed colder, darker, and full of foreboding. Herbert's laugh, so full of life the day before, was now silenced forever. The monkey's paw lay there, twisted and sinister, a reminder that wishes, when granted, do not come without consequence. Part 3. The days that followed were heavy with sorrow. Mrs. White could scarcely bear the grief of losing her son, and Mr. White sat silent, staring at the twisted monkey's paw on the table. Its presence was now a constant reminder of the terrible consequences of their earlier wish. One evening, as the house was quiet, Mrs. White, desperate and unwilling to accept her son's death, seized the paw. "If you have any power, grant me one more wish," she cried, her voice trembling. "I wish my son were alive again." Mr. White tried to restrain her, shaking his head. "Be careful, my dear, the paw's magic is not to be trusted. Think what you are asking." But Mrs. White was determined. She clutched the paw and whispered the words of her wish. The house seemed to grow colder, the shadows longer. Outside, the wind moaned, and the night felt charged with a strange, unnatural presence. Soon, a knocking began at the door, slow, deliberate, and unmistakably human. Mrs. White's eyes lit with hope and terror. "It's Herbert! My son has come back to me!" she cried, rushing to the door. Mr. White, realizing the danger of what might come through that door, knew he must act. Desperation and fear drove him to his knees, as he grasped the monkey's paw, whispering a wish of his own. With a trembling hand he wished his son safely gone, to prevent whatever horror might be waiting on the doorstep. The knocking stopped abruptly. Mrs. White, holding the door handle, found it immovable. She opened the door slowly, but outside there was nothing. No sign of Herbert, no figure in the darkness, only the cold wind and the empty street. The monkey's paw lay on the floor, lifeless once more. Its spell was broken, its magic fulfilled in the cruelest way. Mr. and Mrs. White, drained and silent, understood at last that some forces are beyond human control, and that wishes, no matter how heartfelt, can bring consequences far graver than they ever imagined. The house was quiet again, and the fire flickered low. The paw, twisted and shriveled, lay forgotten on the floor, a grim reminder of the folly of attempting to alter fate.